A lot of crazy things happened this episode, but I can guarantee you the thing that most people are going to be talking about is the thing that would make Quentin Tarantino very happy. It's the foot fetish. A lot of people are going to talk about the foot fetish. Hello, interwebs! I am here to talk about the latest episode and the penultimate episode of Season 1 for House of the Dragon, The Green Council. And I have a lot of thoughts about this one, but overall I am extremely positive on it. But I do have some thoughts, mostly coming off of the last scene of last episode and how it really influences this episode, specifically with the motivation and how we're supposed to view and feel about the character of Alicent Hightower. So let's get into all of that. Though before I do, I just wish to say apologies for my slightly disheveled look right now. I've had a bit of a long weekend for some very frustrating reasons that I'm not going to get into here. If you are curious about it, my other channel has several videos on that front. So it's just been a long weekend, and I have a bit of a headache at the moment. So just apologies that I'm not looking as super presentery and nice as I normally do. So anyways, that's a me thing. Thank you for indulging my vanity for a moment, because I know most of you didn't even care or notice, but it bothered me, so I'm putting it out there. Anyways, let us get into this episode. First and foremost, like I said, I loved this one, and I think the most prominent reason why was the tone. The, just pervasive sadness and yet dread that just built to this entire episode. It just felt like, last week we had Star Wars Andor, which was another very tense episode that just kept building and building up to this big heist scene in that episode. And this episode kind of had that same feel, but less in an action sense and more just this growing gross dread building just feeling throughout all of it, leading to that final scene where there is that explosion that even I did not expect, having read the book. It looked amazing. And so I just want to really credit the show's just the ability to just really build that tone throughout this entire episode was just fantastic. I thought it was near perfect. I'm gonna kind of table Alicent for a second here, because I have a lot of things to say about her specifically as a character that I think I have complex feelings about her and her motivation. So I'll kind of put her off to the side and we'll discuss her in a second. To focus on everything else though, I loved seeing this Grey Council meeting early in the morning and them just discovering what their plan was going to be, to sort of say hey, look, we kind of were planning to do this all along. And Alicent, you're saying that the king gave the okay to this on his deathbed. Awesome. That kind of gives validity to what we were kind of going to do anyways. So it's just this was their plan all along, and now they're just enacting it and getting it out the door. And you just sort of see these men are just going to grab at the power that they had the chance to grab at that moment, and that was great to see. And I love seeing everyone just sort of realizing and reacting to it in different ways. You have that one maester who's I will not stand for these treasons. I don't believe that actually is the case. I mean, good on him. And then just gets murdered for it by Kristen Cole. Just straight up, because he thought he was slandering the queen, just throws him down on the table and smacks his head, and it's damn. And that leads to an interesting tense standoff with the head of the the King's Guard, the Lord Commander, and him just sort of at the end of all of this basically going I'm not gonna have part of this treason. You all figure it out, and I'm just gonna walk out, and I will come back when it's my time, if it ever comes back again. So I thought that was a very tense and wonderfully played scene. And then this gets into the schisms that we are seeing throughout the rest of the episode. And again, I'll come back to Alicent in a second, because I kind of want to have my own separate discussion about her. But you get to see Otto sort of making his schemes of we need to get Aegon, get these things set up, send these ravens, get this stuff out. We need to secure our power as quickly as possible before Rhaenyra learns about it and other people have the chance to warn her / begin to ferment words against us to say that we're going against the king's wishes. So he's just trying to do it as fast as possible, under the radar possible, and keep the words from getting out as fast as possible. I loved his scene with the lords of the realm, and saying look, you're gonna swear fealty to the king right now, to my son, my grandson Aegon, and you're not gonna have any other chance to sort of think about it. You have to do it now, or we'll imply that we're going to kill you. And there's that tense moment that guy says no. And he's not killed right then, though they find pretenses later on to kill him so that word doesn't get out to Rhaenyra. So again, all of that was tense. I loved these, like the Alicent and Otto trying to send out their minions to find Aegon. So we have Kristen Cole and Aemon versus the two Erics. And I love the conversations we have between the two of them. We have Aemon, who is sort of regretting the fact that like, look, I know my brother, I'm helping you, Cole, on this, but my brother's a piece of shit, and I am obviously the much better ruler here. Basically everyone agrees, and I'm just sort of frustrated that I have to do it and give my brother this power. But screw it, I'll do it because it's what needs to be done in this moment to secure my ability to hold on to my power. So like he's doing it for his own power as well, his own self-servingness, eventually leading to them catching Aegon. But then I also really loved the two Erics conversation. Keep an eye on the Erics, by the way. If you have not read the book, I will not spoil for you, but their story, you wouldn't think it for two like random twin Kingsguardsmen, but their story is actually one of the most interesting and poetic of the entire book. So keep an eye on those two and their sort of conflict, because I liked seeing that one of them was like, look, we do our duty, we are here to get Aegon. The other one's like, Aegon's a piece of shit, man. You see what he's hanging out with and doing, like this fucked up stuff down here. It was just an interesting sort of like place to see these two brothers have two varying opinions on their king. So keep tracking that throughout the series, because I think it'll be interesting, and I'll leave it there. I also loved seeing Daemon's, I forget her name, apologies to her, Daemon's sort of sex worker girlfriend that we see come up here. It's clear that they are really expanding her character because they want to have that average person on the ground character that we don't get to usually see in Game of Thrones. It was kind of a similar thing that we had in Game of Thrones the series as well. We had a few sex worker characters as well, and I like that she sort of like has the power from it. It's like, look, I can tell you where Aegon is, or I could kill him. And then you wouldn't have your ability to do any of this. You wouldn't have this like moral superiority that you're pretending to give yourself to the people. That I think was like interesting power move by her, and saying, you're going to protect the kids or else I'm going to kill them. And, she's kind of like, she has nothing really to hang her head on with that. Like Otto says that he's going to do something, but who knows? I doubt it. Don't really trust dudes in power, but she's making her play and doing what power she can, wielding what power she can in that moment. So that was an interesting little moment there. I kind of have to talk about Rhaenys now, Princess Rhaenys, so that brings me into Alicent. And so I want to actually talk mostly about her, because she's the one that I found very interesting. I'm on record, if you remember my review of last episode, that I really disliked how that episode ended with the scene where Viserys, right before he dies, kind of says some stuff about the prophecy, about the fire and blood prophecy, that he thinks he's saying to Rhaenyra, but because he's very sick and dying, he says it to Alicent, who mistakes it as him saying that he wants Aegon on the throne, her son, when he's actually referring to Aegon the Conqueror from way back in history. I still don't love that scene, because it hinges so much of Alicent's motivations on a misunderstanding. And I really often hate that sort of thing, because it's a very cheap way to motivate a character. There's a misunderstanding, and so that's like going to set them off, so you can have this like misunderstanding hinge an entire character's motivation upon, and it's kind of a cheap way to do that, instead of doing it the like way by building a character realistically, as well as, and not that Alicent isn't realistic, but it sort of gives it like a false motivation for her, as well as just kind of makes her look silly. And kind of dumb, because we know as the audience that her motivation is kind of built upon a false notion. So I'm still of that feeling, but I can understand, sitting as like someone with my writer brain, I could see a writer in the writer's room thinking this way of why they need to do that. Because what it allows the writers to do with Alicent is it allows them to make her stay sympathetic to us as the audience, while everyone around her is doing shitty things. Because while everyone in that room of the Green Council is like, yeah, we were going to do this anyways, Alicent is only willing to go along with this because she had that misunderstanding, and because she thinks she's doing what Viserys wanted. And I get that, because it allows them to make greater statements about her character, with her character that I think go in line with the themes that this show is wanting to do. And that is, I think, very much shown in the Prince Rainey's Alicent moment, where she goes to the princess and says, like, look, you should have been queen. We support me. We can be the voice in the men's ears that can really manipulate them. Like, our place will never be on the throne, but we can really, it would have been better if women were running things, but at least we can influence things, right? And Rainey's is just like, yeah, you're building you don't want to like set women free. You want to reinforce women's place in this hierarchy. You want to build a window to look out of your prison instead of breaking the prison. And that fits very much in, I've spoken before in previous reviews how the writers kind of view Alicent Hightower as a woman for Trump character, sort of akin to a woman who works in very patriarchal systems, who believes she's fighting the patriarchy, she's fighting for feminism, but all she's really doing is reinforcing white women, specifically's place. Not that race plays much of a role in Game of Thrones, but it's sort of that same sort of idea of like women's place is subservient to men, and men in power. Even though she thinks she's sort of doing this radical thing for women, she's ultimately reinforcing this place. And we've seen that even in the last episode where she sort of manipulates that young girl. She has sympathy for this young girl who was sexually abused by her son, but she sort of manipulates her into staying quiet because of her place of needing Aegon to be the king of the realm. And so she's not willing to hold her son accountable, even though she's willing to disown him privately. She's not willing to do that publicly because it ultimately does not serve the position and the status quo that we already have. So I actually think that that's a really interesting idea. I've had problems with them displaying her as a woman for Trump character in opposition to Rhaenyra, because it makes her kind of the very overreactive and character, like in the scenes where she's like gone way over the top, like in episode 6, I think in my case, we're like, oh, I need to protect my children, and like screaming at Aegon and things like that. But when they do it right, I think showing her character in that light makes her sympathetic, but ultimately like really allows us to be critical of her. And that's what I've wanted from this series a lot. I've wanted the show to have that nuance where it's being sympathetic towards her character, but not letting her off the hook for the criticism that she should face. And for those scenes, I really liked, and that does hinge upon her being sympathetic to a degree, for us to be in her thinking throughout this episode, and so the writers hinging that upon like her misunderstanding. I understand where that comes from. I really wish they had found a more natural way to build that. There are ways that they could have done that, like if they had tweaked some of scenes with her, I think in earlier episodes, that made it flow more naturally into this. I think they could have actually still made her sympathetic while not having to hinge upon this misunderstanding. Maybe you'll disagree with me, but I think it's a cheap way to motivate the character, but it at least allows us to get to interesting stuff. I think they probably could have woven or threaded that needle a little bit better, but the scenes that they are able to get out of it, I really did love. One other thing with that too is you get to see that Alicent has to like use her body in ways that she shouldn't have to in order to get information, because Larys having that foot fetish with her and only giving her information by letting him masturbate to her feet was deeply uncomfortable, but again rang true in a kind of a dark way about like she's only able to have power by commodifying her body in a really gross way that she would not consent to otherwise. And it reads as real and it's gross and disgusting, but I not buy it. So it showcases the place that she is placed in as a woman, even with people who should be her subordinates, technically. It's a gross scene, but again, rings true. Also, future Jessie here, just want to make it clear, I don't think foot fetishes are inherently gross. Like, do you? I don't personally have foot fetishes, but anyone's welcome to have a fetish with whatever. The reason that scene is gross is because Alicent clearly would not want to do that if she didn't have to, and Larys is taking advantage of her need for information in order to get his jollies off. That's what is absolutely gross, not the foot fetish inherently. Enjoy your kinks. I'm not kink shaming here. Just want to make that very clear. This all leads us to the final sequence of the episode, where we have Aegon sort of being like, I don't want to be king, screw it. And then again, we sort of get him feeling righteous in his ability because of his misunderstanding through his mother. Though I'm less bothered by that because it does come off of like Alicent's sort of conviction which I did like in some degrees, even though I don't like where it comes from. So Aegon being this like kind of shitty person, being put in this position and like thinking like, oh well, I guess I am kind of righteous in it, when he sort of gets it from his mom. I do buy. And then we get the fantastic set piece with the crowning of Aegon, and we have the visuals in this are so great. This crowd of people, the door just shining the light through, this big crowd of people just cheering on Aegon, reinforcing this like system. Was like, yeah, he's king. Was great. And then Rhaenys just burst through with that dragon, killing so many people. I was like, ha, damn. Whew, that was intense. And you see this moment where she could have changed the course of history right there. If she had just burnt Aegon and Alicent and everyone else to a crisp, would have literally changed the entire battle. You know, it would have changed the entire sequence of events to come, and changed literally the entirety of Westerosi history, hinged upon that one moment. And she didn't take it. She flies off, presumably to warn Rhaenyra of what's going on. But you know, she could have killed him. And but what I like about it, to a degree, while there's a part of me that's like frustrated, but obviously she can't, you know, she's not going to make that decision because the show needs to happen. We know this war is coming, so there's an element of like she can't because plot, but there is an element of the stuff that I like, because it does come out of her, again, sympathy for Alicent, that I really enjoy. So I think that understanding of her, I think, is what allows her to fly off, and I think in a justified way, but just barely. It's like if people don't like that moment, I could very much understand why, but it works for me, but just barely. But that is the end of my review for House of the Dragon, the penultimate episode of the season. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Did you like it? Did you hate it? I thought it was a really solid episode that I have conflicted feelings about when it comes to Alicent, but everything else I was really, really digging. So yeah, that's my thoughts on House of the Dragon, episode 9. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Beyond all of that, I hope you all, live long and prosper, I say as I hit my hand on my armrest. Love y'all. Mwah.